Hong Kong, 1999. A city of lights, a vertical labyrinth of glass, steel, and suffocating humidity. In the chaotic sprawl of Tsim Sha Tsui, millions of people live stacked on top of one another. They share walls, they share air, they share the noise. You would think, in a city that never sleeps, that secrets would be impossible to keep. You would think that if a woman was screaming for weeks, someone would listen. But the loudest screams are often swallowed by the city's roar. We are conditioned to look for monsters in the shadows, in dark alleyways, in the woods. We don't expect to find the monster inside a brightly colored, soft, synthetic icon of innocence. Hello Kitty. A symbol of cuteness. A mouthless face that suggests quiet obedience. But in May of 1999, police officers walked into an apartment on Granville Road and found a Hello Kitty doll that was anything but innocent. It was a mermaid Hello Kitty. Large, plush, smiling. But when they picked it up, it was heavy. Too heavy. And it was wet. Inside the cotton stuffing, hidden deep within the fabric of childhood innocence, was the boiled, severed head of a 23-year-old woman. This is not just a story about murder. It is a story about the absolute disintegration of humanity. About 3 men who turned a cramped apartment into a slaughterhouse. And the ghost who finally decided to speak. Fan Man-yee was 23 years old. She was a nightclub hostess, a woman navigating the complex, neon-lit underbelly of Hong Kong's nightlife. She was described as kind, but perhaps too trusting. And in 1997, she made a mistake. A small, seemingly insignificant mistake. She stole a wallet. Or she allegedly stole a wallet. The wallet belonged to a man named Man-lok, a drug addict, a triad wannabe, a pimp. The wallet contained about 4,000 Hong Kong dollars, roughly 500 US dollars. A petty crime, a misdemeanor. But for Man-lok, it was an invitation to unleash hell. Chan didn't go to the police. He went to the Bank of the Underworld. He demanded she pay him back. But he added interest. Criminal interest. The debt spiraled. 4,000 became 10,000. Then 20,000. Then 100,000. It was a mathematical impossibility. A cage made of numbers. Fan Man-yee tried to pay. She tried to work it off. But Chan was not interested in money anymore. He was interested in ownership. On March 17, 1999, the debt came due. Chan, along with 2 accomplices, Lung Xing-cho and Lung Wai-lun, kidnapped Fan Man-yee. They didn't take her to a dungeon. They didn't take her to a basement. They took her to a 3rd-floor apartment at 31 Granville Road, a busy street surrounded by shops, hotels, and tourists. They dragged her up the stairs into a flat with peeling paint and windows covered in grime. And for the next month, that apartment would become a universe of pain. want you to visualize the space. Hong Kong apartments are small, intimate. In 31 Granville Road, the air was thick with smoke. Not just cigarette smoke, the acrid chemical smell of burning plastic, and the sweet metallic scent of crystal meth. The three men were high, constantly. Their reality was fracturing. Their empathy had been chemically erased, and in the center of this drug-fueled haze was Fan Man-yee. They treated her not as a human, but as a plaything, a stress ball for their aggression. The details of the torture are difficult to articulate. They defy the logic of standard violence. When they got bored, they would beat her. When they got creative, they used fire. They would melt plastic straws, watching the molten blue liquid drip onto her skin. And through it all, they laughed. Neighbors later reported hearing sounds. Not screams. Fan Man-yee was often too weak to scream. They heard laughter. They heard the heavy thuds of what they thought were furniture being moved. They heard the woman begging. "Please," she would whisper, "let me go." But the men would just turn up the volume of the television. They drowned out her agony with game shows and pop music. One of the most chilling aspects of this case is the audience. There was a 13-year-old girl there. We will call her Ah Fong. She was the girlfriend of one of the accomplices. She watched. She sat in that apartment, smelling the burning flesh, watching the life drain from Fan Man-yee's eyes. She later testified that she saw Fan Man-yee's hands shaking uncontrollably. She saw the woman tied to a chair, her face swollen beyond recognition. And she did nothing. Fear is a powerful silencer. Or perhaps, in that apartment, morality had simply ceased to exist. By mid-April, Fan Man-yee fell silent. Her body could no longer sustain the trauma. She died alone, in a corner of that filthy room. But for Chan and his men, the problem wasn't the murder, it was the disposal. They were in the middle of one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. You cannot carry a body down the stairs of Granville Road without being seen. So, they decided to erase her, piece by piece. They moved the body to the bathtub. They dismembered her. They took the meat from her bones. They placed the remains in large cooking pots on the stove. Imagine the smell. In a small apartment, the scent of boiling flesh is overwhelming. It is distinct. It clings to the walls. To mask it, they cooked food, strong-smelling soups. They sprayed air fresheners. They turned the apartment into a factory of death. They threw some remains in the trash. Other parts were flushed. But there was one part they couldn't get rid of: the head. The skull was too large to flush, too conspicuous to throw away. So Chan looked around the room. He saw the Mermaid Hello Kitty doll. It was giant, soft, a comforting figure. He took a pair of scissors. He cut open the back of the doll. He pulled out the white, fluffy stuffing, and he shoved the boiled skull of Fan Man-yee inside. He packed the stuffing back in around the bone. He stitched it back up, and he placed the doll back in the room.
a tomb of polyester and cotton. Fan Man-yee was still watching them through the stitched eyes of the cat.
The men vacated the apartment. They left the doll behind. They thought they had gotten away with the perfect crime. There was no body. No missing persons report was filed immediately. Fan Man-yee had simply vanished into the neon fog. But the dead, they have a way of demanding attention. A month later, the 13-year-old girl, Ah Fong, began to dream. Every night, she would close her eyes and see a woman, a headless woman. The woman would reach out to her, her hands dripping with blood. She would scream, "Give me back my head! Give me back my head!" Ah Fong couldn't sleep. The guilt, or the ghost, was eating her alive. She became hysterical.
She told a social worker about the dreams. She told her about the apartment, about the woman they tortured, about the Hello Kitty doll. The police were skeptical. It sounded like a drug-induced hallucination, a teenage fantasy. But they went to Granville Road. They broke the lock, and immediately they were hit by the smell.
The apartment was abandoned, but it wasn't empty. The smell of decay was ingrained in the floorboards. And there, sitting on a pile of debris, was the Mermaid Hello Kitty. When the lead inspector picked it up, he felt the weight. He felt the shifting of bone inside the plush. When they cut it open, the horror of Granville Road was revealed to the world. The skull was there. Her teeth were there. The clerical error of death that we spoke of, there was no error here. Only deliberate, methodical evil. The three men were arrested. They were charged with murder, but in a twist of legal frustration, they were convicted of manslaughter. The jury couldn't determine exactly which injury killed her because the body had been so thoroughly destroyed. They were sentenced to life in prison. The judge, usually stoic, described their actions as depraved. He said, "Never in Hong Kong has a court heard of such cruelty, depravity, callousness, brutality, violence, and viciousness." The apartment building on Granville Road stood for years after. Nobody wanted to live there. Tenants reported seeing the silhouette of a woman in the windows. They heard the sound of plastic sizzling at night. Eventually, the building was demolished. But they say, even now, if you walk past that spot on Granville Road, when the wind dies down and the traffic stops, you can still smell the faint, sickly scent of boiling soup. And you might just spot a flash of pink in the corner of your eye. Thank you for listening. Tonight, when you tuck your children in, when you look at the piles of stuffed animals at the foot of their bed, take a closer look. Give them a squeeze. Check for lumps, because you never really know what's hiding inside. Good night.